Fight scenes are notoriously difficult to write, but League of Legends did something in their Welcome to Noxus cinematic I wish more writers would remember when it comes to writing a fight scene. And that's that fight scenes aren't actually about the fight. The more important part is that it's a scene in a story. And so the question you should ask yourself isn't how to write a great fight, it's how do you write a great scene that happens to have a fight in it. And lucky for us, during the Arcane AMA, the writers of Arcane gave us their personal checklist of questions to ask yourself on how to write a great scene. So today, we're going to go through their checklist and discover how to write a great fight scene, or how to write a great scene that happens to have a fight in it. Now, for this analysis, this focus is going to be on Darius, as he seems to be the primary POV character in the scene, but as a fun exercise, please apply anything that you've learned from this with Trundle as a comment down below. Now, first question, how does the scene develop the character? Darius starts this fight in a position of power. He's walking down the center of a line, placing him in a position of authority and power among his men. And then, we get our first look at him. He's got big armor, a bigger axe, and biggest of all, his confidence. Darius stares down Trundle and doesn't even blink. And what is all of this doing? Well, the writers are signaling to the audience that Darius is strong, and they're doing it by showcasing the symbols of his power, his armor, and his axe. But then, to go further, they're also placing a question into our head. What kind of a fighter is he? Is he a stealth fighter? With that armor and axe? I don't think so. So is he a defensive fighter? Well, he's got the armor, but no helmet and shield, which means he must only be one kind of fighter, an aggressive one. And how do they show us this? Darius takes the first swing, and the fight begins. Now, Darius is clearly holding his own in this fight until the first symbol of his strength is compromised. His axe cuts into Trundle's club and a frost forms, which will clearly spread to Darius if he continues to hold it. So what does Darius do? Does he give up? Does he run away? No. He drops his axe and runs in to tackle Trundle and start wrestling and grappling him. But then he gets thrown to the ground, and the second of his symbols of strength are compromised. His armor. It is literally ripped from his body. He manages to get up, and this time it looks like he's going to run, which is fair because, yeah. But then Darius does something surprising. He stops and turns to continue fighting. And this tells us something really important about Darius as a character. He doesn't give up. Even when his axe is no longer safely usable, even when the armor gets ripped from his body, Darius continues to fight. But that drive to fight is about to be put to the test in this moment when Trundle looks as though he's going to rip Darius's head from his body, and it looks like the fight is over. But again, we see Darius do something we wouldn't expect. Darius picks up the frozen weapon he discarded earlier, the frost damaging his own body, clearly causing him pain, but he fights through it, and then he uses it to secure his victory. Now, it's a victory that comes at a great personal cost, but this tells us a lot about the philosophy of Darius as a character and what he's willing to do to win, and puts him in an interesting position for any future stories that may come his way, and creates questions about those futures. For example, is that hand going to continue to stay frozen? And if so, how is he going to fight? So, does this fight scene develop the character? The answer? Absolutely. And it does so by introducing complications and placing him in situations where he's forced to make choices, run or fight. And every time we see him fight, even at great personal cost. So the lesson? When writing a fight scene, give your characters obstacles to overcome during the fight that forces a choice between two actions. Escalate these choices until you reach the highest stake or the most potent version possible, usually in the form of an impossible choice, and show us what that character is willing to do to win. So let's move on. Second question. How does this scene further the plot? Now, as far as the plot goes, this scene is pretty simple, which makes sense because the scene in total is pretty short. The story, as far as we know, goes, Noxus and trolls are in some kind of standoff. We don't know exactly what. Is it a territory dispute, some kind of honor match, a tournament? We don't know. But what we do know is that whatever it is, it's important enough for each side to send in representatives. Darius from Noxus, Trundle from the trolls. They fight, Noxus wins, and the trolls back off. Simple, focused, effective. World start scene in one place, end scene in another. And so does that further the plot of the scene? Absolutely. And it does so in a simple and effective way. So the takeaway here, plot doesn't have to be complex, but each character needs to have something to lose in this fight, something to elevate the stakes and a reason for them to be here. Otherwise, why would they fight? Last question, how does the scene teach the audience something new about the world? Now, we learn a lot of new things in this scene. We learn that there are trolls in this world and that Noxus is at war or having some kind of violent dispute with them. And we learn that when it comes to Noxians in fighting, it's win, no matter the cost. We also learn that trolls use some kind of ice magic that they aren't affected by, but is extremely pervasive and damaging to normal people and can be transferred to weapons, which tells us something about the trolls and why they don't use sharpened blades or armor. They don't need it. Why would you use something that would just get destroyed immediately by ice weapons? We also learn about the world through the way in which these two characters fight, which tells us about the character and their cultures. Darius's punches are controlled and placed, while Trundle is literally just throwing hands. And so, does this scene teach us new things about the world? Absolutely. And the lesson is, when it comes to applying this to a fight scene, show the audience a character's culture in the way that they fight. Show us a new magic system via applied weapon. Teach us about your world through the fight itself. And there you have it, using the personal checklist of the writers of Arcane to determine whether they wrote a great scene or a successful scene. The answer is yes, and they did it through a fight. Throughout the scene, the fight actively served the plot and told us more about the world and these characters. So what are the final takeaways? You need to ask yourself 3 questions. First question, how does the scene develop the character? The second question, how does the scene further the plot? And the last question, how does the scene teach the audience something new about the world? And then, when you're writing the fight scene, you need to give your characters obstacles to overcome during the fight that forces a choice between 2 actions. You then need to escalate these choices until you reach the highest stake or the most potent version possible, usually in the form of some kind of impossible choice. And then show us what the character is willing to do to win. Then, you need to remember that plot doesn't have to be complex, but each character needs to have something to lose in this fight, something to elevate the stakes, and a reason for them to be here. And finally, teach the audience about a character and their culture by the way that they fight and lose. Teach us a new magic system by demonstrating it in a fight. But lastly, the most important thing to remember when it comes to writing a great fight scene is that it's about writing a great story. It's so evident that that's the focus here, because when you tell a great story that shows a sense of progress, it doesn't matter if it's a fight scene or a verbal conflict. Good storytelling is the engine that drives us into caring about these characters and caring about who wins and who loses and how. And good storytelling is exactly what they did here. But the most impressive part? They did it all without using a single line of dialogue. And that is how you write a great fight scene. If you enjoyed or found any of this helpful, please subscribe to help grow the channel. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.